If you were standing at the boundary between right and wrong, and a single small decision could change your entire life, would you choose to keep that opportunity or return it to the person who dropped it? That morning, on a rain-soaked sidewalk, a poor young woman bent down to pick up a wallet. Inside were $2,000 in cash and the name of someone who had never lacked money. She had no idea that in that very moment, her character was being quietly put to the test. That morning, the city woke beneath a thin but persistent rain, not heavy enough to make people stop, yet cold enough to make every step more hurried than usual. Black umbrellas drifted along the sidewalk like moving ink stains. The sound of traffic blended with the steady rhythm of raindrops striking the road, forming the familiar music of the city, a sound people hear every day yet rarely truly listen to. Amid the crowd, she walked a half-beat slower, not because she didn't know how to hurry, but because her mind was already overflowing. 3 job rejection emails were still open on her phone, a rent payment alert glowed red in her banking app, and a missed call from the hospital last night. One she hadn't yet found the courage to return. Her name was Lily, 24 years old, an age when many people still allow themselves to dream, but for Lily, each passing day felt like a survival equation. She once believed that hard work alone would eventually make things right. But this city didn't run on belief. It ran on money, on connections, and on opportunities not everyone could reach. Lily once had dreams. She used to carry a camera through narrow streets, passionately capturing light, fleeting moments, and ordinary things others overlooked. But dreams don't pay hospital bills, and passion doesn't negotiate with landlords. She sold that camera 6 months ago. On the day she handed it to the buyer, Lily smiled, a strained smile, as if smiling long enough could dissolve regret. It didn't dissolve. It only sank beneath the surface, waiting for a moment of weakness to rise again. Lily was thinking about all of this when she nearly stepped past the wallet. It lay at the edge of the sidewalk. Black leather, clean, strikingly different from the things usually forgotten on city streets. She took one more step, then stopped. Not because of intuition, just a tiny, very vague feeling, as if something would be wrong if she kept walking. Lily turned back. The wallet lay there, motionless, as rain slowly soaked into its polished leather. No one stopped. No one bent down. Everyone was busy with their own world. She picked it up, heavier than she expected. The first feeling was unease. The second was hesitation. She glanced around, waiting for someone to come running, out of breath, panicked, searching desperately. But no one came. Lily stepped beneath the awning of a closed cafe, the smell of cold coffee mixed with damp metal. She stood there, holding the wallet, as if it might speak on its own if she waited long enough. Finally, she opened it. Inside, everything was perfectly arranged. Credit cards, identification, and cash. More money than Lily had held in her hands over an entire year. She counted slowly, not to be certain, but because her heart was beating too fast. $2,000. The number didn't shout. It whispered. It whispered of sleepless nights, of an empty refrigerator, of hospital calls Lily was always afraid to answer. No one would know. No one would see. This wallet, if it disappeared, would disappear quietly. A fleeting thought, very brief, very fast, passed through her mind. Just this once. The thought startled Lily, not because it was evil, but because it was so understandable. She closed her eyes for a second. In that moment, Lily remembered the small kitchen where she grew up. She remembered her father's low, weary, yet patient voice each evening. A person can endure being poor, but if you lose yourself, there's nothing left to hold on to. That sentence had never brought money, but it had kept Lily standing through many hard days. She opened her eyes, closed the wallet. Her hand trembled slightly, not from the cold, but because she had just refused an easy escape. Lily didn't know whose wallet it belonged to, didn't know whether that person was rich or poor, didn't know whether they would ever realize they had lost it. But she knew one thing. If she walked away today with that wallet, then tomorrow, even if she paid her rent, she would never be able to look herself in the mirror. She took a deep breath, then pulled her old phone from her pocket. The cracked screen lit up in the rain. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating for a beat. Lily had no idea that in just a few minutes, this decision, so small it seemed insignificant, would open a path she had never dared to imagine. And the wallet in her hand was not merely something that had been lost. It was the beginning of a test. Lily stood beneath the awning for a few more seconds, as if she needed to be certain that she had just made a decision she could not turn back from. The rain continued to fall steadily, unhurried, undramatic, exactly like her recent days, prolonged, quiet, and heavy. She unlocked her phone. The cracked screen reflected her face faintly, with dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep. Lily typed the name from the identification inside the wallet into the search bar, simply to know where she should return it. She expected nothing unusual. Perhaps an office worker, an ordinary business person, or someone like the millions of other residents in this city. The results appeared almost instantly. Lines of text, photographs, and news headlines flooded her screen one after another. Lily blinked, then looked again as if she had misread. The name appeared repeatedly across financial news sites, photos taken in front of towering glass buildings, numbers Lily could not even begin to imagine. A billionaire. Lily felt her throat go dry. She read each line slowly, forcing the information to sink in. The man, the owner of the wallet, was the founder of a major biomedical technology conglomerate, one of the most powerful people in the city, a name that, once spoken, made others immediately change their tone. She looked down at the wallet in her hand. $2,000. A number that suddenly felt small. Not because it had lost its value, but because the person who lost it could earn that amount again in just a few minutes. Perhaps far more, simply with a signature. A new thought slipped quietly into Lily's mind, sharp and insistent. If he's that rich, does this really matter? The question made her stop, not because she intended to keep the money, but she realized how quickly circumstances could distort human reasoning. She could easily convince herself that this person doesn't need the money, this person won't be affected, no one would be harmed. The arguments sounded reasonable, very humane, but Lily knew they were all just different ways of saying the same thing, finding an excuse to cross the line. She folded the phone shut, not out of fear, but because she didn't want to know anything else that might make her decision harder. Lily began to walk. Each step felt heavier than before, not because of the rain or fatigue, but because the wallet in her coat pocket seemed to carry an unanswered question. Was she doing the right thing? Or was she only making her own life harder? She thought about the job interview later that afternoon, a small restaurant where she would once again stand before a stranger, smile, answer familiar questions, and hope that this time they would nod yes. She thought of her father, lying in his hospital bed, always saying he was fine, even though Lily knew he simply didn't want to worry her. If she turned back right now, if she pretended she had never picked up the wallet, everything would be much easier. But then Lily remembered something. Easy had never been what she was looking for. The company headquarters rose before her like a cold mass of glass and steel, stretching into the gray sky. It didn't look like a place people like Lily were meant to enter. Just standing in front of the doors made her feel smaller. She adjusted her coat, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. The lobby was expansive, bright, and unsettlingly quiet. The The sound of Lily's shoes echoed clearly across the polished stone floor. She could feel the glances, not harsh, but enough to remind her she didn't belong there. Lily approached the reception desk. She spoke clearly without circling the point. She had found a wallet. She wanted to return it to its owner. The name she mentioned changed the air instantly. The receptionist looked up, hesitation flickering across their eyes. But when they looked Lily up and down, the doubt quickly returned. "He's very busy." The sentence was short, polite, and firmly closed. Lily felt warmth rise to her cheeks, not from embarrassment, but because she understood exactly what was happening. No one said it out loud, but everything was clear. Some doors do not open for everyone. She could nod, hand the wallet over the counter, and leave. No one would blame her. But Lily didn't do that. She tightened her grip on the wallet, her voice calmer than she expected. "There's cash inside. I just want to be sure it's returned in full." A moment of silence. Not long, but long enough for Lily to realize she had just taken another step, one she wasn't sure where it would lead. Finally, a call was made. A door opened, not completely, but enough for her to step into a different light. Lily had no idea that from this moment on, the story was no longer simply about returning a lost wallet. It had become a confrontation between her and a woman struggling just to survive, and a man who had everything except trust. And between them stood a truth neither of them was ready to face. The elevator doors slid shut behind Lily with a soft, almost emotionless sound. The space was so quiet, she could hear the steady beat of her own heart. The numbers on the digital panel climbed at a measured pace, 20, 32, 47. Each passing floor felt like a step farther away from her familiar life, a life of tight spaces, constant lack, and endless calculations. Up here, everything was different. The cold scent of metal, the pristine white lighting, and the silence of power. When the elevator doors opened, Lily needed a moment to steady herself. Before her stretched a space so vast it felt empty. Dark wooden floors, abstract paintings aligned with perfect precision. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls revealed the rain-soaked city below. From this height, Chicago looked like a miniature model, its hurried people reduced to tiny moving dots. Lily stepped out, suddenly aware of how out of place her worn shoes looked against the flawless floor. A woman was waiting, impeccably dressed, sharp-eyed, standing straight as if shaped by years of discipline. "You're the one who found the wallet?" Lily nodded and handed it over with both hands, a small gesture, but an honest one. The woman opened the wallet and checked each item carefully. Cards, identification, cash, everything intact. Not a single bill out of place. A very brief moment passed, then she nodded slightly. "Wait here." The large door ahead closed behind her, leaving Lily alone in a waiting room so spacious it made her feel too small. She stood upright, but her hands were tightly clasped. In her mind, thoughts began to collide. Maybe I shouldn't have come up here. Maybe handing it to the receptionist would have been enough. Maybe, but every maybe was already too late. The door opened again. "He wants to see you." Lily took a deep breath. The office beyond was even larger than she had imagined. A massive desk sat at the center, so orderly it felt almost cold. Behind it, the city, no longer a backdrop, but part of the room itself, as if the person seated here owned the entire view. And then she saw him. The man stood as Lily entered, tall, broad-shouldered, gray as threading his hair at the temples, gray eyes, sharp, deep, accustomed to being avoided. He didn't speak right away. He simply looked at her. There was no contempt in his gaze, nor simple curiosity. It was the look of someone used to assessing everything, fast, precise, and without revealing emotion. You're the one who returned the wallet? His voice was low, low enough that it didn't need to be repeated. Yes. Lily realized she was standing straighter, not from tension but from instinct. She didn't want to bow her head to anyone, no matter who they were. Did you know how much money was in it? Yes. And you still brought it here? Yes. A short pause, very short, but heavy enough to weigh down the room. The man stepped closer to the desk and opened the wallet. The bills were placed neatly beside it like an unspoken reminder. Do you know how many people in your situation would see this as a stroke of luck? The question carried no challenge, just a fact laid plainly on the table. Lily didn't answer immediately. She looked at the wallet, then met his gaze. Probably a lot. Then why didn't you? The question landed softly, but it struck deep. Lily thought for a moment, not to find a better answer, but a truer one. Because if I kept it, she said slowly, I would have to live with that every day. The man tilted his head slightly, a tiny gesture, but Lily felt the shift. You think I wouldn't notice that this money went missing? Maybe you would. Maybe you wouldn't. She shrugged lightly. But that isn't the point. This time, he really looked at her, not as someone returning lost property, but as a person. You're different from most people I meet. Lily didn't know whether to take that as a compliment or a neutral observation. She simply replied, I'm not trying to be different. He smiled, faintly, just the slightest curve at the corner of his mouth. Do you know who I am? Yes. And you're still standing here speaking to me like this? Lily paused for a beat. You're the man who lost the wallet, she said quietly. And I'm the one who found it. Beyond that, I don't think I need to behave any differently. In that moment, something in his eyes changed. Not exactly softened, but no longer completely closed. He sat down and gestured for Lily to take the seat across from him. An invitation, not a command. Do you know, he said, his voice lower now, that most people who enter this room want something from me? Lily sat, back straight, hands resting on her lap. Maybe I do too, she answered honestly, but not in the way you think. He let out a quiet laugh. The sound surprised Lily because it was so human. Then what do you want? Lily didn't answer right away. Outside, the rain kept falling, the city kept moving. And on this highest floor, two people from entirely different worlds sat facing each other. Right now, she said, I just want to be sure that I did the right thing. The man looked at her for a long time. Then he spoke, slowly, each word deliberate. Perhaps you've done something far more right than you realize. Lily didn't know that in that very moment, this meeting had gone far beyond a lost wallet. It had reached somewhere very deep, a place neither of them had allowed anyone to enter for a very long time. The room remained silent for a few seconds after his words. Not an uncomfortable silence, but the kind that appears when both people understand that something important is about to be said. The man leaned back in his chair, his gaze still on Lily, no longer as sharp as it had been at first. It was deeper now, more contemplative, as if he were weighing a move that hadn't existed in his original plan. What's your name? He asked. Lily. Lily, he repeated softly, giving a slight nod. What do you do? Lily pressed her lips together. A simple question, yet it touched a sensitive nerve. At the moment, I'm looking for a job. He didn't look surprised. He merely nodded, as if the answer had already been accounted for. You have an interview today, don't you? Lily paused for a moment. Yes. Where? A small restaurant in the south of the city, a server position. She didn't know why she answered so thoroughly. Perhaps because his tone wasn't judgmental. It felt like he was simply gathering information, the way he did with every other decision in his life. He glanced at the watch on his wrist. You'll be late. Lily let out a breath. I know. She stood up, inclining her head slightly. Thank you for your time. I just wanted to be sure the wallet was returned to the right place. She turned to leave when his voice came from behind her, not loud, but enough to stop her. Sit down. Lily turned back. Just a few minutes, he continued. I don't often ask people to stay if they want to leave. She hesitated for a beat, then sat back down. He looked directly at her. I want to offer you a job. The air in the room seemed to freeze. I'm sorry? Lily asked, unsure she had heard correctly. Executive assistant. He said it calmly, as if commenting on the weather. Starting salary, $90,000 a year. Full benefits. Lily didn't respond right away. She didn't gasp, didn't smile. She was simply silent. In her mind, thoughts rushed in all at once. Rent, medical bills, sleepless nights, rejection emails. She looked up. Why? He raised an eyebrow slightly. Why what? Why me? He didn't answer immediately. He stood, walked toward the glass wall, and looked down at the city below. The rain had eased, leaving only faint streaks of water on the surface. For the past 20 years, he said slowly, I've met many intelligent people, many talented people, and many people are willing to say whatever they think I want to hear. He turned back to Lily. But very few do the right thing when they believe no one is watching. Lily swallowed. You don't know what kind of person I am, she said. You've only seen a moment. That's true, he nodded. But that moment says a great deal. She looked down at her hands. They were trembling slightly. And, he continued, his voice lower, because you clearly need the money. Lily snapped her head up. So this is a reward, she asked, for returning the wallet? Something flickered across his eyes, not anger, but surprise. No, he said, this is an opportunity. For whom? For both of us. The room grew heavy. Lily stood up again, this time without hesitation. I'm sorry, she said, her voice calm but firm. I can't accept that job. Now it was his turn to pause. Why? Because I don't want to be bought. She spoke slowly, each word deliberate. And I don't want to become part of your test. He studied her closely. Test? Lily took a deep breath. The wallet, she said. It wasn't dropped by accident, was it? The silence lasted longer. Then he exhaled. No. One word, but enough to change everything. I left it there on purpose, he said, with cash inside, to see what would happen. A chill ran down Lily's spine. And the people before me? She asked. The ones who picked it up? No one brought it back here. Lily closed her eyes for a second. Do you know, she said, her voice growing slightly hoarse, that some people would keep that money not because they're bad, but because they have no other choice? He remained silent. You call it a test, Lily continued, but for many people, it's survival. He looked at her for a long time. For the first time, Lily saw no control in his eyes, but uncertainty. I'm used to viewing everything in terms of risk and return," he said slowly. "Perhaps I went too far." "Perhaps," Lily replied. She slipped her worn coat over her shoulders. "Thank you for the offer, but I don't think I can work for someone who tests people when they're at their most vulnerable." She turned to leave. "Lily," his voice stopped her. "You've just done something even rarer than returning a wallet full of cash." She turned back. You dared to tell me directly that I was wrong." He stepped forward once. "That job will still be here if you change your mind." Lily looked at him, for the first time not with caution, but with understanding mixed with weariness. "Perhaps," she said softly, "that's what you should be thinking about." Then she walked away. The door closed behind Lily. In the highest room of the building, the man stood still for a long time, staring at the space where she had just been. The wallet lay on the desk, open. The money was still there. But what he had just lost might not be so easily recovered. The elevator doors closed, reflecting Lily's faint image on the cold metal surface. She let out a long breath, as if she had just stepped out of a room with no air. The top floor of the building was now behind her, but the conversation was not. His words echoed in her mind, slow and uncomfortably clear. "That job will still be here if you change your mind." Lily closed her eyes for a moment. She didn't feel strong. She didn't feel noble. She only felt tired. Tired of always being the one who chose the more challenging path. Tired of knowing that every right decision came with a price she was never sure she could afford. When the elevator stopped at the lobby, Lily stepped out into a stream of well-dressed people, each with a clear purpose, a clear destination. Only she slowed her pace by half a beat, as if she hadn't yet fully returned to her old world. Outside, the rain had eased, but the city still carried a heavy, gray weight. Lily walked without direction. She didn't go to the interview. She didn't return to her small apartment. She just walked to escape the feeling that she had just lost something, even though she wasn't sure what it was. Her phone vibrated in her coat pocket. The name on the screen made her heart sink. Dad. Lily stopped by the curb, slipping under the awning of a store under renovation. She hesitated for a few seconds before answering. "I'm here." His voice on the other end was weaker than usual, not by much, but enough for Lily to notice. "Are you busy right now?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "No, I'm not busy." A brief silence. Then he said very softly, "They changed my medication." Lily tightened her grip on the phone. "Is it better?" she asked. "It seems so." He hesitated. "But the insurance doesn't cover this new one. I just wanted you to know." Lily closed her eyes. She was used to that kind of sentence. It sounded like information, but in truth it was an apology. "How much?" she asked. A number was spoken, not large for many people, but enough for Lily to know she couldn't manage it. "I'm fine," he said quickly, as if reading her thoughts. "Don't worry, I'll find another way." Another way. Lily let out a bitter smile. For years, another way had always meant enduring a little more pain, a little more sacrifice. "I'll call you back later, okay?" Lily said, her voice lighter than she felt. "I'm on the road." She hung up and leaned her back against the cold wall. At that moment, the words she had spoken in the highest office suddenly felt like a luxury, not wanting to be bought, not wanting to become part of a test. They were beautiful words, but they didn't pay for medicine. Lily slid down and sat on the step. People passed by without looking. In this city, a person sitting with their head lowered in the street was nothing out of the ordinary. She thought about the camera she had sold. About the nights, she once believed that if she just tried a little harder, things would get better. She also thought about the man on the top floor, about the uncertainty in his eyes when she told him he was wrong, about that very brief moment when he was no longer a billionaire, but simply a man who had been touched. Lily didn't hate him, but she couldn't pretend that everything was fine. Her phone vibrated again. This time it was a message from the hospital. She read it, then reread it. There was nothing dramatic, just a short, cold notification like every other one. But to Lily, it felt like a door slowly closing. She stood up. At this point, there was no room left for pride, no room left to prove who she was. There was only one simple, brutal question. If not now, then when? Lily pulled the business card from her coat pocket. On the back was a phone number, written in neat handwriting. She stared at it for a long time. In her mind, two images appeared side by side. One, Lily, holding firmly to her principles, watched her father endure a little more suffering. And another Lily, choosing to step into the world she had once rejected with the hope of changing something from the inside. There was no perfect choice, only the choice that hurt a little less. She dialed. The phone rang less than twice before someone answered. Lily? His voice was low, slightly surprised. It's me, she said. I've thought about it. A brief silence. I'll take the job. She spoke slowly, but decisively. Not because of the money, but I need it. You don't have to explain, he replied. His voice carried no sense of victory. It was simply lighter. There's one condition, Lily added. Go ahead. I won't promise to always agree with you. And if you're wrong, I'll say so. A moment of silence. Then he let out a quiet laugh. Perhaps that's exactly what I need. When the call ended, Lily stood, still in the middle of the street. The city was still noisy. The rain is still drifting lightly. There was no radiant light, no triumphant music. Just a young woman stepping onto a new path, uncertain, imperfect, but the only path she could keep walking. And somewhere, high above, a man was also standing by a window, realizing that. Sometimes what changes a life, it is not a successful test, but someone honest enough to come back, even when they could have walked away. On the first morning Lily returned to that building, it wasn't raining. The sky was a pale gray, offering no promise of anything good, yet making no threats either. The city woke as it always did, indifferent and busy, exactly like the day before. There was no sign that one person's life had just taken a different turn. Lily stood before the large glass doors, adjusting the simplest dress she owned, the same one she had worn to failed interviews before. She had washed and ironed it carefully, as if neatness could make up for the quiet sense of displacement pressing in her chest. She looked at her reflection. Nothing had changed. Still the same girl, still the same eyes. Only now, today, she was entering a different role. Security checked her temporary badge and nodded her through. No one stared, no one looked curious. Lily realized something. Real power rarely needs to announce itself. It simply opens doors. The woman she had met the day before was already waiting in the lobby. The same straight posture, efficient voice, unreadable eyes. Follow me. No warm greeting, no congratulations, just work. They walked through long corridors, glass offices, people bent over screens, deadlines, goals no one else fully understood. Lily walked half a step behind, listening to every sound, trying to remember everything, as if one moment of inattention might send her back outside. They stopped beside a small office next to the large one on the top floor. "This is your space." Lily looked inside. A neat desk, a new swivel chair, a computer that had never been turned on. Not luxurious, but enough to say she belonged here, at least on paper. "Your job," the woman continued, "is to keep his day from becoming chaos. Schedule, meetings, correspondence, the things no one sees, but without them, everything collapses." Lily nodded. She didn't ask questions. She knew this wasn't the moment to prove anything. The morning passed in focused silence. Forms, instructions, procedures delivered in an even tone. Lily took careful notes, though her thoughts still hovered somewhere between reality and a lingering question. Am I really doing the right thing? By noon, the woman glanced at the clock. "He wants to see you." The simple sentence still made Lily tense. She stood, took a deep breath, and stepped into the room next door. He was seated behind the desk, reading documents. He didn't look up right away. He looked nothing like someone who had just changed another person's life. "Sit." His voice was neutral, neither distant nor familiar. Lily sat, hands resting neatly on her lap. "How was the morning?" he asked, still not looking up. "Very information heavy." He nodded slightly. "You'll get used to it." Then he opened a drawer, took out a long box, placed it on the desk, and slid it toward her. Lily looked at the box. She didn't touch it. "What is this?" she asked. "A tool." He looked up, his gaze not probing, simply waiting. Lily opened the box. The camera lay inside, pristine, perfect, the kind she had only ever dared to admire through shop windows or advertisements. Her heart dipped by a single, quiet beat, as if someone had brushed against a memory that had never truly faded. "I can't accept this," she said immediately. "You will," he replied, "because it isn't a gift." Lily looked up. "Part of your job," he continued, "is to document what we do, not to boast, but to remember that behind the numbers are people." Lily froze. She had never told him about the camera, never spoken of her old dream. As if reading her thoughts, he added, his tone unchanged, "I don't make decisions without doing my homework." Lily closed the box, her palm trembling slightly. "You investigated me?" "Enough to know you're not here because of luck." She didn't know whether to feel valued or exposed. He stood and walked to the glass wall. "There's an event this weekend," he said. "You'll come with me, as my assistant. And the storyteller." The storyteller. The words echoed in Lily's mind longer than they needed to. When she returned to her desk, the pale afternoon light slanted through the window. Lily placed the camera box beside the desk without opening it again, just leaving it there, as a reminder that the past hadn't truly been abandoned. She worked until evening. As the building slowly emptied, Lily gathered her things and stepped outside. Cold wind brushed past her, but it no longer cut as sharply as it had on the rainy day. She took out her phone and sent her father a short message. "I've started a new job. Things are okay." Not entirely true, but enough to begin. Lily looked back at the building behind her, tall, silent, and full of untold stories. She didn't know where the future would lead her, didn't know whether she would have to pay a price for today's choice. But she knew one thing. She had not entered this world by bowing her head, and she would not stay if it meant losing herself. On the top floor, the lights were still on. A man stood by the window watching the city slowly light up, realizing that a decision that seemed so small sometimes doesn't open a door, It opens a part of a person he had forgotten how to trust. The evening of the event arrived faster than Lily expected. She stood in front of the mirror in the dressing room, quietly studying the girl reflected in it. The dark blue dress fit just right, elegant, without being showy. It didn't turn her into someone else, it simply made her look a little more grounded. The camera resting against her wrist carried just enough weight to remind Lily why she was here, not to be seen, but to observe. The reception hall glowed with light. Crystal glasses brushed gently against one another, producing a clear, delicate sound. Polite laughter drifted through the air, steady and carefully polished to the point of safety. Lily moved slowly through the crowd. She raised the camera, lowered it, then raised it again. Each time she pressed the shutter, she asked herself, "What am I really capturing?" Perfect smiles, firm handshakes, eyes that only truly lit up when speaking of advantage. Then she saw him. Daniel stood at the center of a small circle, his dark suit setting him apart with quiet composure. He didn't speak much. He nodded, smiled just enough, listened at the right moments. A man accustomed to attention, but never competing for it. Lily watched him through the lens. From this distance, he didn't look like a billionaire. He looked like someone keeping everything under control, himself included. She caught a tiny moment. A middle-aged woman touched his arm lightly and said something in a low voice. Daniel didn't respond immediately. He simply inclined his head slightly. His eyes darkened for half a second. Then he smiled again. If Lily hadn't been looking through the lens, she might have missed it. But the camera had taught her something. Real emotions rarely linger long enough to be seen with the naked eye. She lowered the camera. In another corner of the room, a few people were whispering. Lily didn't try to listen, but specific names still reached her ears. A woman's name. The name of an old incident. And a sentence, spoken softly yet heavy enough to shift the air. After everything that happened, he's still standing like this? Lily stood still. She didn't turn around, she didn't look at them. But in her mind, the pieces began to fall into place. She remembered the uncertainty in Daniel's eyes when she spoke about the wallet. Remembered how he stood by the glass wall whenever he fell silent. Remembered his voice when it lost its certainty beneath the surface. A loss and a betrayal. Perhaps the details didn't matter. It was enough to know that someone had once been very close to him and then left most ruthlessly. Lily raised the camera again. This time she didn't photograph handshakes. She didn't photograph perfect smiles. She photographed the silences. Daniel stood alone by the window, the city lights reflected in the glass. In that moment, he wasn't speaking to anyone. He wasn't playing a role. He was simply standing there. Lily took the shot. Not because it was her assignment, but because she knew this moment was real. When she lowered the camera, Daniel turned. Their eyes met. There was no irritation, only a strange sense of understanding, as if he knew exactly what she had just seen. He walked toward her. "Are you doing okay?" he asked, his voice lower than the music. "Yes." "It's crowded," he said. Not a complaint, just an observation. Lily nodded. "But there are moments that are very quiet," she replied. Daniel looked at her a second longer than usual. "You captured them, didn't you?" "I did." He nodded. He didn't ask more. They stood side by side for a few minutes without speaking, watching the flow of people pass by. Lily realized the silence between them no longer felt heavy. It felt like an unspoken agreement. There was no need to perform anymore. In the distance, a speech began. Daniel was invited onto the stage. As he stepped up, the lights focused. The room fell silent. He spoke about numbers, about research, about the future. But at a certain point, his voice slowed. "There are things," he said, "that cannot be measured by money." There are decisions that, without integrity, render every success hollow. Lily watched him through the lens. This time, she didn't take a photo. She knew some words didn't need to be recorded. They only needed to be heard. When the speech ended, applause filled the room, clear and enthusiastic. But Lily noticed Daniel wasn't searching for it. He simply nodded, then stepped down. Toward the end of the evening, as guests began to leave, Daniel stopped beside Lily. "What did you capture?" he asked. "Things you don't try to show people," she replied. Daniel smiled, a very slight smile. "Thank you." Just one word, but enough. As Lily stepped out of the reception hall, cool air rushed in. She paused for a moment, looking up at the night sky framed by tall buildings, and she realized tonight didn't change the world. It didn't heal every old wound, but it revealed the cracks, and sometimes it's through those cracks that light can finally get in. Lily tightened her grip on the camera. She knew this story. It was only just beginning. The reception wound down slowly, as if the room itself was reluctant to let go of what had just been revealed. When the final guest departed, the lights softened, the music faded, and only a very real quiet remained. Not the silence of emptiness, but the kind born of emotions just touched. Lily packed away her camera, slipping the strap from her wrist. She didn't review the photos right away. Not from uncertainty, but because she knew some moments didn't need to be revisited to be certain they had happened. She stepped onto the small balcony behind the hall, where the night wind threaded through the gaps between towering glass walls. The city below was still lit, but no longer as loud as before. From this height, everything moved more slowly, more quietly, as if life itself, when seen from afar, became a little less harsh. Daniel was there. No tailored suit, no social smile. Just a man leaning on the railing, looking down at the city. Lily stopped a few steps away. She didn't want to interrupt, but Daniel had already heard her. "You're not heading home yet?" he asked, his voice low without turning around. "I thought you weren't either." Daniel gave a soft laugh, so faint it nearly dissolved into the wind. "There are nights," he said, "when staying alone is easier than going back." Lily didn't ask more. She stood beside him, following his gaze. A silence stretched between them. Not heavy, not awkward. It felt like two people quietly agreeing that, at least in this moment, there was no need to say the right thing. "Did you get many shots?" Daniel asked. "Enough," Lily replied. "Not too many, but the ones that mattered." Daniel nodded. "You always seem to know what matters." Lily turned to look at him. The light reflected across his face, revealing lines of fatigue that daylight usually concealed so carefully. "Do you want me to delete some of them?" she asked softly. "The private ones?" Daniel was silent for a moment. "No," he said. "Keep them." He turned to her. This time, his eyes held no scrutiny, no control. "There are parts of me," he continued, "that have grown used to being hidden. But if you've seen them, then maybe it's time they don't have to disappear anymore." Lily felt a slight tightness in her throat. She understood that feeling. The feeling of having to be strong for too long, to the point of forgetting that you're allowed to be weak. "What you heard tonight," Daniel went on, his voice lower, "about that woman, about the past." "You don't need to explain," Lily said. "I'm not here to judge." Daniel smiled, not because he was forgiven, but because he was understood. "But I want to tell you," he replied. "Not to justify myself, but because you deserve to know." He turned back toward the city. "My wife passed away 2 years ago," he said. "Not suddenly, slowly, painfully. I watched it happen, day by day. Lily stood, still. After that, Daniel continued, I thought that if I controlled everything well enough, if I never let anyone get too close, there would be no more loss. He shook his head slightly. But then I trusted the wrong person. And that time, I lost more than just trust. Lily thought of the wallet, thought of the words he had once admitted. I wanted to see whether honesty still existed. The wallet, Lily said quietly. It wasn't about the money, was it? Daniel turned to her. This time he didn't look away. No, he said. It was a question. What kind of question? Whether I could still trust someone without controlling them. The wind picked up. Lily pulled her jacket a little closer. Do you know, she said slowly, that day I was very close to walking away? Daniel looked at her, his gaze catching. Not because I wanted to, Lily continued, but because I was tired and afraid that if I kept choosing what was right, life would never soften. Daniel was silent for a long time. Then why did you come back? He asked. Lily thought for a moment. Because some things, she said, aren't about proving you're good. They're about keeping yourself from becoming bitter. Daniel nodded, a very slow nod. Perhaps, he said, that's what I forgot. They stood together a little longer. No one spoke about tomorrow. No one spoke about the future. But within that quiet, something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. As Lily prepared to leave, Daniel called out to her. Lily! She turned back. Thank you, he said. Not for the wallet, but for not walking away when you had every right to. Lily smiled, a very gentle smile. Perhaps, she replied. Sometimes staying is a form of courage, too. She walked off, leaving the balcony quiet behind her. Daniel remained there for a long while, watching her fade from view. And within him, thought surfaced, clear and unlike his usual calculations. Some people enter our lives not to be tested, but to remind us that trust, it is still worth beginning again. And somewhere, deep within, something that had seemed lost was quietly finding its way back. Time passed in a tranquil way. There were no explosive moments, no dramatic turns that made it instantly obvious that everything had changed. Just days following one another, steady and unremarkable, like breathing. Lily grew accustomed to arriving at that building every morning, accustomed to the sound of elevator doors closing, accustomed to the white lights in the upper floor corridors, accustomed to people saying her name with a cautious trust, as if they were still watching to see how long she would stay. She worked hard, no more, no less. She didn't try to impress. She didn't try to prove she deserved to be there. She simply did her job. Schedules became more orderly. Meetings ran more smoothly. Difficult emails were answered in a softer tone. Daniel noticed. Not immediately, but gradually. He didn't offer praise. It wasn't necessary. What he noticed were the minor changes. Mornings no longer began with frustration over disrupted schedules. The gaps between meetings no longer felt empty. And most importantly, he began to believe that someone could stand beside him without needing to be guarded against. Lily changed as well, not because of the money, but because of the feeling of standing on her own feet. She moved her father to a better treatment facility. She didn't talk much about it. She simply called him every evening, listening as he spoke about exhausting physical therapy sessions that still carried hope. Those calls no longer ended in long silences. They ended with promises. I'll call you again tomorrow. The camera became part of Lily's life again. She didn't just photograph events. She photographed people, staff working behind the scenes. Patients are involved in support programs. eyes filled with both worry and expectation. Daniel viewed those photographs in silence. He didn't comment. He didn't edit. "You don't make things look better," he said once, very quietly. "You make them look more real." Lily wasn't sure if that was a compliment, but she smiled. Some evenings they stayed late after work, not to discuss business, just to be silent in the same space. Daniel read documents, Lily edited photos. Two parallel worlds, not colliding, yet no longer unfamiliar. Lily noticed Daniel beginning to change the way he viewed people. He listened more, interrupted less, tested less. He was still sharp, still decisive, but no longer cold. Once, during a tense meeting, Daniel stopped mid-discussion and looked at Lily. "What do you think?" he asked. The room went completely silent. Lily spoke slowly as she shared her thoughts. No detours, no softening the truth, just what she believed was right. Daniel nodded. "We'll go that way." No one objected. After the meeting, Lily lingered, slightly uneasy. "I wasn't sure I should speak," she said. "I didn't want to." Daniel cut her off. "That's why I asked." A short sentence, but Lily understood. Not everyone wants the truth, but once you say you do, you have to accept it fully. There were difficult days too, days when Daniel slipped back into his old silence, days when Lily felt she was standing too close to a world that didn't belong to her. But unlike before, they didn't avoid it. "Are you okay?" Lily asked one afternoon. Daniel looked at her for a long time. Then he said, "Not really." And that was all. No explanation, no advice, just an acknowledgement. Lily understood that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about learning to live with what's been lost without letting it control every choice. She learned that for herself as well. Not every principle has to be defended through isolation, and not every compromise is a betrayal of who you are. One late afternoon, Daniel stood by the glass wall, watching the city light up. "If you hadn't come back that day," he said without turning around, "what do you think would have happened?" Lily thought for a moment. "Maybe," she said, "everything would have continued, but gone nowhere." Daniel nodded. "There are people," he said slowly, "who don't change the world, but they change the direction from which we see it." Lily didn't respond. She knew the sentence didn't need an answer. Time continued to pass, not more forgiving, not gentler, but it revealed an important truth. Not everything that comes from a test is trustworthy, and not everything that comes from kindness is weak. In a tranquil space between two people who once lived at opposite extremes, something was forming, not because of fate, but because they chose not to turn away when things became difficult. And sometimes, that is the only way for a story to reach its ending without losing itself. 6 months after that rainy day, the city was still the same. The familiar streets were still crowded during rush hour. The cafes still turned on their lights early each morning. People still hurried past one another, carrying stories no one asked about. There was no sign marking the moment everything changed. No background music swells when the correct decision is made. Life rarely works that way. Lily stood by the office window looking down at the stream of traffic below. The late afternoon sunlight washed over the glass in a pale gold, not dazzling, but warm enough to make you linger a little longer. She had grown used to this place, not because it was luxurious, but because it no longer made her feel like she needed permission to exist. The camera lay on the desk beside her next to the latest photographs she had just finished editing. They weren't images of glamorous events, not portraits of influential figures, but ordinary faces. A nurse smiling after a long shift, a patient holding their child's hand, a researcher bowing their head over newly achieved results. Daniel stood behind her, quietly watching the images appear on the screen. "You still see the things other people overlook," he said. Lily smiled without turning around. "Maybe because I used to be the one who was overlooked," she replied. Daniel was silent. Then he nodded. He no longer stood too far away, nor too close, just close enough for both of them to know. They had chosen to stay. "Do you ever think," Daniel asked, "what would have happened if that day you hadn't bent down to pick up the wallet?" Lily thought about it. The question no longer troubled her the way it once had. It no longer carried the weight of right and wrong. "If I'd walked away that day," she said slowly, "I'd still be me, but maybe a more cautious version, less trusting, less hopeful." Daniel looked out the window. "And I," he said, "would have kept testing people and convincing myself that no one was trustworthy." A pause. Not sad, not heavy, just the truth laid down without justification. Lily turned to look at him. "That wallet," she said, "tested me. But it tested you too." Daniel smiled, this time without avoiding it. "And perhaps," he replied, "neither of us passed it perfectly." "But we didn't turn away," Lily said. Daniel nodded. Somewhere deep within, something had closed. Not a wound, but the fear that had once governed every decision. That evening, Lily left the building later than usual. Dusk was settling in, and a light breeze carried the distant scent of rain. She paused on the steps, watching people pass by, people who might be standing before small choices, yet choices powerful enough to change the direction of their lives. She thought about the first day, about the rain-soaked wallet. At that moment, her hands trembled as she opened it. Back then, she didn't know she was doing anything significant. She only knew she didn't want to betray herself. Perhaps that is all anyone can ever do. Daniel stood on the top floor, watching Lily fade into the crowd. The city was no longer a faceless mass of chaos. It had faces, stories, people he no longer needed to test to believe in. He remembered the words he had once spoken. The wallet was a test. But now he understood that it had never been enough. Because there are things that cannot be tested with money. Reactions cannot measure it, cannot be forced through power. Trust exists only when people choose to give it freely. A few days later, Lily sent Daniel a photograph. Just one, no caption, no explanation. It was an image of an old wallet resting on a park bench, sunlight slanting through the trees. No money, no documents. Just an ordinary object, empty, harmless. Daniel stared at the photo for a long time. Then he replied with a single line. "This time, I won't test it." Lily smiled when she read the message. Because sometimes, the ending of a story doesn't lie in everything becoming perfect, but in learning when to stop. If you're listening to this story, perhaps somewhere in your own life you've had a wallet like that. A small choice. A moment no one saw. A decision that seemed meaningless yet stayed with you. And maybe, in that quiet moment, you were unknowingly shaping the person you would become. Not everyone grows richer after making the right choice. Not everyone is rewarded immediately. But one thing is sure. You will always have to live with the person you chose to be in that moment. And sometimes, that is the only reward, but also the most worthwhile one. If this story made you pause for a beat, made you think about a past choice or one that lies ahead, stay with Deep Life Tales. Not to find the correct answers, but to ask questions that go deep enough. Like if you believe integrity still matters. Share if you believe a small decision can change more than we imagine. And subscribe so we can continue walking together through stories that aren't loud but linger long enough to stay with